Hello. This is an impromptu kind of thing. Um, I find live streams are more convenient than recording and editing and everything else. So it's Saturday afternoon, it's the 14th of June, 15th of June even. See, I don't even know the date. It's sunny and very gusty outside. I haven't been awake long, whole story, but nothing exciting, mind you. But I just thought it seems a nice afternoon to have a quiet, chill, relax for me before I have something to do this evening. So I didn't announce it because, as I said, it was totally a spur of the moment thing, but it will be available to watch on my main channel once it's processed and everything else. So what I've got here that you can see I'm doing, oh, let me just move my microphone back a little bit. I think this could be a bit of a pain in the behind, actually. Oh, let's move that way. Oh, gosh. Got stuff falling all over the place here. That might be better if I have that a bit closer, maybe. Try that. It's a 7 by 10 piece of, oh, the Hoo mixed media paper that I quite like. I haven't cut this down at all, but I am drawing just some lines just to give me that frame that will end up looking like we've got a little window into some kind of whimsical or abstract world, depending on what happens. But I am going to divide this into two sections because I think one big page will just take me too long. They're not identical in size. Am I bothered? Heck no. But I am going to work on just this one. Let me turn the light on this. I've got shadow behind and it's a function of where the sun is because I haven't got any artificial light on. Okie doke, so I've got three fine liners, 01, 03 and 05, which are Unipin fineliner pens because they're the ones at hand. I also have 4B graphite pencil. This one's a Derwent graphic, and a tortillon, which has got a mucky nib, but that's fine. It works because I'm only using it for this. I've brought the pencil out just in case I want to draw guidelines in or anything else, but all will be fine and well. I'm just going to choose somewhere to start. And I tend to favour in this point where it's almost where, it's where the intersections of the top third and the bottom third, or thirds of thirds, sort of like occur. It could be in any corner, but I tend to favour the top left and work from there. I could start in the middle-ish somewhere, but I don't want to. I want to start off centre. I don't want to start up against the edges, although I could do. Actually, I think I might, because sometimes I really do enjoy starting at an edge. And with me of late, it's going to be a kind of columnar, a column-like structure, which makes me quite happy, actually. I like columns. They appear in architecture a lot, particularly Romanesque architecture that I love. Well, I say particularly, but I particularly love Romanesque architecture, as I have mentioned many a time. This is the kind of architecture that came across with the Normans in 1066 when they invaded Britain. And my favouriteest church isn't far, well, I say isn't far from me. It's about an hour drive or so. And it's just outside Hereford in a little village called Kilpeck. And I think it's the Church of St. Michael and All Angels. I could be wrong, but it's amazing. The architecture, the sculpture is amazing. It's honest, it's wonderful, it's stylized, it's beautiful. There's lots of curves in it, and although the patterns on arches can often be quite geometric, they still have this lovely curved nature to them, so they're not just flat. They sort of like don't, oh yeah, I could wax lyrical about it. And I haven't been to Kilpeck since before lockdown, so no doubt I'm due a visit at some point, but not quite yet. It will happen. but just not at the moment. It's still having to take care of myself in many ways, and I've got a fair amount of things going on at this time. In some ways, and I need to replenish my energy stores in between different things. And I have to say, the video I recorded yesterday did leave me very tired because it involves concentration in many ways. You know, I'm trying here to check that my hand's out the way so you can see what I'm doing, what I'm saying, keeping track of that, checking that everything is going fine with my computer and whatnot, because it's a different setup for me, and it's familiar, but it's not, if that makes sense. Because oh, that's an unusual shape. I'm going to go with it though, because you know, it came out of my hand. No idea why, but it did. It actually looks quite almost leaf-like, but perhaps not. Let's have a look. So perhaps here I'll put a little cutout section in there. So it looks like oh no, it looks like a bird head. Well, let's turn it into one, is it? By just putting an eye in. It works for me. Reminds me of Romanesque things. See, I'm talking about it and it's appearing from my unconscious mind as well, because I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. I say this so often. I go on almost autopilot when I draw these abstract or very stylized pieces of art, pen drawing. Now, in my last video, which was yesterday, 14th of June, I did use watercolor to fill in the white spaces, the empty space around the designs. I'm going to do the same thing today because I want to look at that a little bit more. I haven't done anything to the other one at all. I've left it as it is. In fact, I'm not even entirely sure where I put it. I think I know where it is, safely away. I mean, I could use other media if I wanted to, but I've chosen to go with watercolors because they're quick. They're relatively easy for me if I just want a single color, which is what I want. And I could come back with more to add, you know, darker colors or textures, or use different media like Inktense to do that, or coloured pencils, but not today. I really like that. That looks like I've got almost like a bird kind of thing, sort of like wrapping itself around a ball and holding it in place. That was unexpected. It's not planned. And this will be the same as this, so I'm going to have fun filling that in, I think. And we just put perhaps a plinth in here. I don't know if it's called a plinth, but you know, just a level here that I can then start to. That wasn't something I'd expected to do, was to join this together, but it sort of like seems quite the thing to do in some way. But here I'm going to have this kind of fluting out, as it were, to create something that perhaps looks like it's got some dimension. Now that was a really bad pen stroke there, but I'm going to go with it. Because again, I don't know exactly how I'm going to add detail to this, but it, you know, it may be that I'm going to, if I go and thicken all of these lines, then there's a good chance I can thicken that one, yes. It's a bit better, it's not perfect, but that's fine. I do want to add more weight to the top of these. And now that separates it from that one, so it does look that little bit different. Yeah, I just want to create another barrier there, as it were. And I am going to put this here, but I'm going to put a fine line there. I'm not pressing on my pen so hard, so a finer line is coming out. And then I'm going to just put some beading in, like that. And I'll come back and deal with this with finer pens in a little while. I'd like to thank people who've left me comments. I'm sorry I wasn't there for when the video went live, but I was involved in something else yesterday evening. I was on a Zoom meeting, so I couldn't make it, but I did want it to go live. I'm glad that the video had uploaded and processed quickly enough for it to go live. Do you know why it's taking so long to upload videos to YouTube at the moment? It took over 2 hours, 2.5 hours to upload that video. And I was panicking about problems going wrong with it and so on. I don't know why. Perhaps it might have just been a busy time of day, or it may just be, who knows, that I haven't been active for a long while. And perhaps YouTube kind of dials down the speed at which you can upload. Sorry, that was off screen. Didn't mean for it to be, but it just happened that way. I do forget about checking where I am. So this would be a nice curve to complete there. That's an interesting shape as well. It almost looks again like a bit of a bird's head, as if I can put something in that's like a beak and perhaps a head going there. And yes, I know there are lines here, but perhaps if I make them a feature of it, then it will make sense. And perhaps here I can do the same thing with this beak and just put a fine line in there to suggest a beak is occurring. That works. Sometimes when I draw shapes, I can see creatures or other motifs in them, and I will go with that. There's no kind of wing here, but perhaps I can just pop one in like so. Not big, but big enough. And that is just the tail or whatever going behind, and I'm happy with that. And perhaps here I'll just pop in a couple of curved lines and then just perhaps one or two there just to suggest feathers. I'm not going to try and put a wing in here because I'd want to draw it over this. So I'm just going to pretend it disappears underneath this and we can't see it. Although my temptation could be to actually put it coming out there, but I wouldn't get a nice shaped curve in. For this, I am going to split this particular column up into sections, I think. Don't know why, it just feels the right thing to do, or an experimental thing to do. And then perhaps I can just follow on from this shape and perhaps go like this, which is lovely. It'll work. All things will work themselves out. Now I need to follow these lines through to the other side, so it looks like this is in front of the bricks or the stones really, that make up this section. And that works nicely. Another one of these nice shapes that's got a nice curvy end. I don't know if that occurs in architecture, but I'm drawing elements that I've seen and I love, the shapes of lines I like to draw, the way my hand likes to move. It gives me some pleasure and joy. Yes, pleasure and joy. It's a sensory experience, drawing. I did do a blog post yesterday, which I know some of you have read and left me comments. And creating art for me is about the whole experience. It's about the feel of pen on paper or the feel of pen on a screen. Although I don't get as much satisfaction from that, isn't that, I'm beginning to realise and understand that. There's something lovely about the friction you have between pen and paper, the sound, um, the way that you have to trust and work with the line that you create, whereas in digital art, it's so easy to correct what you have done if it's not exactly what you would like. And I'm beginning to go favouring the idea of going back to much more, particularly when it comes to illustrating books, because everything else I tend to do on paper. I sketch out the designs on paper and then I ink them in digitally, just in case there are any other changes that need to be made. But I think I'm going to go back to drawing on paper for them because I enjoy it so much more. It may take me longer. It may be frustrating if a change needs to be made further down the line. But it's a change I'm willing. It's something I'm willing to accept, especially as I'm having to learn to ask for help in setting schedules for myself and working out how long it's going to take me to do something like that so I can plan things a lot better. I am tempted to split this block here, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it exactly as it is. So that is my column, more or less, for this. This is very dull and uninteresting. So I think I will put some shapes here that are like this in. Made that one a broader one so it sort of like fits into this, but I can do the same here, and I'm just going to add extra bits of ink inside the curves here just to give it that feeling that we're looking, it's indented as it were, or that this is curved, this inner space is behind the upper space of this particular part of the column. So I like that. This needs something. It's a very big area, but I think I'm just going to add to this here. Like so. Quite like that. I'm wondering if I can get another one in here just to make this section a little bit smaller, but to give me an area to add pattern to, but I've got a border around as well. Let me just go there. That's good. That'll be nice. That's nice as well. Just sticking that one. That needs a bit here. And this could do with a little edge as well, and perhaps something. My favourite little twiddly bits to add. Muka kind of from Zentangle. Some of these look a bit awkward and not really symmetrical or whatever, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to disguise that with some patterns, pen work, texture and so on. I will just pop that in. I'm definitely going to add some kind of texture behind these sections so that the head and everything else stands out. Same here, but I'm not quite sure what yet. But I do want to start something happening here, and I feel I need some kind of foliage. So let me start with some of my favourite leafy shapes. And I'm going to make them fairly big. Like so, as if a statement is being made. And that one, I could have it falling outside of my frame, but I'm not. And I do just want an inner section and an inner section here. and one here. So let's start adding some inky bits to areas here. The bottom of these, just to suggest this is a raised vein. The central vein is raised. And I quite like that. And today I'm going to use inky glue to hold lines together, to join them together in a more solid and solid way in places. That looks almost like a shell, actually. I'm very tempted. What I'm going to do here, though, is I am going to just feel I need to add. Let me move that back up to the middle a bit more. Perhaps something along these lines, and even here, and I've missed there with a line. I shall see what I can do about that at another time. So this is turning leaves more into seed pods, would you believe? I'm just going to fill that in with black. So I'm not going to use any other colour for drawing on this. This could be quite interesting, actually, using some of the watercolour inks, the inks I've got that are waterproof. Not watercolour inks, but waterproof inks. To see how drawings like this happen, and then using that intense kind of watercolour to fill the background in and help to bring them out. It's going to be could be an interesting exploration of art for me. Because my break between projects, I suppose, is more to do with me having a chance to explore and indulge myself in art, as well as recovering my energy and my focus, but is to look at things and be energized and excited by art, which isn't difficult for me because I always am excited, but sometimes it can be really hard when I've done too much, when I'm too tired. I can lose my oomph for doing things, even art, or I just sit and twiddle around and see what happens. Now, these I feel really do need, I mean, here I could almost do, actually, perhaps a little line like that just to help things. And because I overlapped, or my line went outside here, I just thought it might be nice just to make something of it, a tiny little detail. Because I'm working in pen, so I can't erase what I've done easily. I could use correcting fluid, but that wouldn't be a good idea. So rather than do that, I prefer to make something of that mistake so it no longer looks like an error or a mistake or a oops moment, where, oops, I went over that line, and make it part of the design. And if you hadn't seen that, or if I hadn't told you about it, you wouldn't know that these areas here weren't deliberate, would you? And just to help, I may just put a couple more in different places, so it's not looking quite so, awkward. That one could do with another one because I've got a big space there, and the same here. And that just says, yes, we belong here. And I'm just going to add another line here as an edge between that and the rest of the space. That works for me. Now then, I'm going to have, it's so hard to know what to do because I want to fill this in, but I want to leave some blank areas. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe, it's an odd line. What am I going to do with this? Actually, I really don't know. But I know that I will make something of it. Hopefully that will be harmonious with the rest of the design. Or at least not feeling, oh, what did I do? There's always a chance of that. But I think I know what I want to do here. Gee, I quite like that. I'm just going to fill that in. And here I'm just going to fill this in with some black ink, that little corner there. Same here, where lines meet, I'm just filling them in. And that makes quite an interesting shape there. I could take another line from there, but I think I'd like to do that from further up, so that the stem remains quite slender. Perhaps I can just give another bit there and another one here. And then I can see where this goes or how I deal with this later on with a finer pen. Before I do that, I am going to remember to go back and add that inky glue just to make these lines hold together firmly. And where the lines are a bit uneven, I'm just going to add a little bit more ink. And perhaps I'm going to thicken this line so it just looks like there's some shadowing going on there. And I'm definitely going to add ink to this underneath line, to this bottom line here. So that actually looks not too shabby in my mind, though I think I do need just a bit more ink on this one because it's quite a bit thinner than I'd like. I really want to know that that is really meant to be thicker. And perhaps up here as well until we reach the top. There we go. So that will help to carve that into some kind of sculptural design. I am going to complete this with my imperfect wobbly lines. In fact, while I'm at it, I'm just going to draw this frame in completely for another drawing. Part of me actually does want to just split this paper now into two, so I might very well do that, because to film with a bigger piece of paper than is necessary is a bit awkward. So I'll get my paper trimmer out and do that now. Let's just finish doing this one. As I make it wobbly, I'm also beginning to learn to vary the pressure on the pen. So this won't take me very long because my paper trimmer is here. So I just pop it this way. This in here. This is about halfway. It's good enough. There we are. Two pieces of paper that will work together eventually. I am starting to begin the long process of gathering art and putting it in discbound journals, because I've got art everywhere and I can't find anything. And I think putting things like that, disc binding them, keeping them somewhere safe, means that I'm likely to find things again. There's no guarantee of it, mind you, but at least I can make a start. It's an overwhelming task though, so it's something I have to sneak up on myself to do and try and get myself to understand that I don't have to do it all in one go. Just a few together in one time will gradually build up to a lot put together in a longer time. So this is something I'm having to learn, like asking for my deadlines to be split up into small manageable pieces, so a small number of say colouring templates done in a manageable amount of time with enough days there for me if I've overdone it or I've got other things going on, I can take the time out. But also to be accountable to somebody, because I can't be accountable. I find it so difficult to be accountable to myself. It really, really just doesn't work. I think, do you know what? I like this kind of shape so much that I think I may have another one butting onto it here. Oops, that's a wobbly line. But what have I said? Wobbly lines are fine. They're human. I'm trying to remember to hold my pen further up so that my fingers don't quite get in the way. But it's so hard to remember. It's such an unnatural feeling for me that my fingers slip down automatically. I do try, honestly. Oh, hello, Sunshine Star Child. Sorry I didn't see your message sooner. I'm I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for joining me. And I'm so glad you enjoy my art. Um, I hope you get a chance to follow along and to draw along with me and to try all of this for yourself. Um, I hope that my sound is okay and the image is okay because I have no idea. Hopefully, it's all good enough, is all I'm going to say. Because good enough is good enough. So, again, rather than tracing the whole line, I'm going to start somewhere further along and add 1, 2 curved lines. And this outer one is definitely going to be the thicker. And notice that I actually made this one here thicker, which helps to bring the idea that this section actually is almost enfolding something within, almost like it's higher than this section here. So I'm doing that again in both. So let's have a look here. And here. Although I can't see the whole of where these ones go, am I worried? Not a tiny little bit. It is what it is. And if these are things from nature, they're never going to be perfect. If they're meant to represent things of nature, it's never going to be perfect, but it will be good enough. And I think the imperfections, any imperfections I may notice, will disappear. You see, I do favour threes of things, but I think if I tried to put a third one of these in, it could get a little bit awkward. Unless I take the line from here and have it going there and perhaps round here. So it's going back in the opposite direction to show that these things can grow in any darn direction you want them to. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's always a pleasure for people to draw along with me as well, to have fun and to make it your own as well. It's always a pleasure to share ideas with people. I was a teacher for 28 years, and for a couple of years in that, as well as teaching science, I did teach some art. And I taught art to children with special needs, particularly. And it was absolutely fantastic to see the joy that they learned to get from art when they realised that art wasn't drawing like photographs, that you could, it's about creation and expression, and there's so many different media you can use, so many different ways of expressing yourself. And I always tried to do things that would set them up for success, not failure. And they were at the classes I had were absolutely amazing. In fact, because I taught them science as well, they would work their little socks off in science properly, not rushing, but would really, really work hard to get all their work done that I needed to do with them in a week so they could have some extra art time. And if they finished their work earlier in a lesson, everything I needed them to do, then they could get their art out and carry on with that. And I found in one class, I was doing weaving with them, and the boys absolutely loved it. And they loved to create their own yarn by twisting it together and creating new thick cords and so on. They'd spend hours doing that, even though they um, didn't do anything with it necessarily, but they just thoroughly enjoyed that process. Yeah, the bird motifs were very unexpected this morning. I had no idea that that was going to happen, but you just go with it. If something calls out that there's a shape in it, that's what I do. And this kind of flowy and um, curved lines, not very many straight lines, just enough to add that bit of contrast. It's my kind of thing to do. And I haven't, I feel I'm almost completed here, but I do feel I need something here. Just, I think I might put a little nest of these here just to repeat them and hold everything together. Or perhaps, actually, perhaps up here, just from this point up, I could actually add another column. And I think my mind is going to Hundertwasser's architecture and the columns he made in his buildings, which were amazing, almost like beads stacked with quite simple patterns on, with dots and um, tiled squares and things. And I just loved that approach. There's something so simple, almost naive about it, and yet it's so beautiful because it's also joyous. Um, and I'm going to say childlike in its joy, because for some reason, adults find it hard to express that joy and the childlike wonder. It's almost like, oh, we're adults now, we can't do that. And I just go, actually, we can and we should, because the world is a wonderful place. It's full of wonders and exciting things each and every day. If we only look for it, only pay attention to it. I can hear the wind blowing strongly through the trees outside and against my windows. And it's lovely. And I feel the excitement of that energy. I love the way that the leaves are catching the sun and almost sparkling and shining and shimmering as they move. In one bush opposite, which has got shiny leaves, the shadows of some spiked reddish plants growing out of a wall on the ground are moving, and it's fascinating watching that. Or it would be if I wasn't doing this, I'd sit and watch it for ages. And there's a rose bush where the leaves are also catching the lights and sparkling and creating this wonderful movement. And it's just a lovely day. And I'd like to be out there, out and about in it, but I've got skin that doesn't like sunshine. And it's a bit too sunny today. Even in the winter, I have to be careful and wear factor 60. Otherwise, I burn and I break out in almost like grown up acne, but it's not acne, it's rosacea. And it's horrible. So my skin goes all red and blotchy and veiny, and it's not good. But I can appreciate it from inside as well. I also have a bit of a problem going outside. But yes, it is magic. And I think when you let go of any kind of expectation in art and just are prepared to experiment and see what happens, magic happens. Pens are magic, pencils are magic, paints are magic. They bring, you start with a plain piece of paper and suddenly you've got this little world that is amazing and magical and whimsical perhaps, or stylized, that we're only getting a little glimpse of in this one little drawing. And perhaps I ought to actually draw a frame round it as if it is a window frame that we're looking through. In fact, I might actually start to do that on my work and double up the lines. And it is magic, yeah. But I think the sense of wonder can happen despite bills and stress and responsibility, or perhaps it's that when we need it most, where we're feeling that stress of responsibilities, to take a break from it. And there's nothing wrong in taking that break. In fact, we need to, because the bills and the responsibility will still be there, but our heart, soul, mind, body will be refreshed with that break, not worrying about it. And I've learned that in the past, I don't know, 12 years. My last bout of counselling, therapy for complex post-traumatic stress and anxiety and so on. I still have anxiety. It's my resting state, particularly if I'm around people out in the world, which is why I tend not to go out as much as I could, or perhaps should. But then I choose to look after myself. But that sense of wonder, I can be walking somewhere and you'll hear me go, look at that, and it'll be out loud without realizing that I've done it and people might overhear. And then I realize, actually, I don't care, because this is how you should be. You should be looking at these things and seeing how wonderful they are, whether it's nature or man-made. So, or I'm very embarrassing to go to the cinema with, because I'll be the one that stands up and does my fist going up in the air, whoa, yes, at good points, and then realize I'm at the cinema, not at home. So, yeah, I've always been a bit embarrassing like that, but I've only come to understand the value and purpose of it for myself, as I'm beginning to understand myself so much more in the last year and a half, as I've had to look into something that applies to me and makes so much sense of my life in so many ways. And makes me less embarrassed, I suppose, to be me, or less willing to hide parts of me from other people, and to be unashamedly, unapologetically me. I don't make a fool of myself, but I will be that person I am, come hell or high water, I think now. I had a lifetime of trying to bend to be what people want me to be, or what people have told me I am or should be. And I'm now at a time in life, at the grand age of 60, where I want to have what's left of my life being, that phrase, authentically me, and accepting the authentic me. This is quite interesting, but these are very dull and uninteresting, and I do want to put something in with my larger pen. I love spirals and spiral shapes. So that will be nice. With these, I do feel I need that little bit of a border there. And again here, just to split those up. These sections definitely need something inside them, and I think that's the case with both these and on the other side. I'm not making a lot of effort, sorry, off the screen. Hi, Trevor, lovely to have you here. And yet children do, but I'm like a giant child, really. Always have been. Sort of, a little adult when I was young. And I much preferred the company of adults to children when I was a child. But I always had that sense of wonder with the world and with life, and looking for nice things. I just lost that sense as life became overwhelming to me in so many ways. Yeah, self-care is crucial. And it's something I think everybody needs to be taught from a very young age. And people need to have explained to them what good mental and emotional health is, as well as good physical health. And to know and to, for there not to be a stigma around saying, I'm actually struggling with my mental health or my emotional health. I need some help. I can't do this by myself. And I think that is so important. I think if that had been the case for me, I'd have sought help a lot sooner than I did. I would have understood that there was something not right. And of course, it took a long time for the pennies to drop about something else with me. And that's not something I'm comfortable sharing in public at this time. But I am, that's what's giving me almost like my own permission to express that part of me that finds wonder around me and in the world, and in people is too, where I can. Definitely in cats. Okay, I think I'm quite happy with this. I almost want to have something over here. It seems like I could carry that column on actually, because it's quite a narrow one. I do need to thicken some of these lines. Done some. There we go. So I could have this column appearing out of the air around them. And again, just thickening lines before I do anything else. Inky glue when I remember. It's not always the case. And for this one, I am going to do something where I create, it's almost like a tab there. And this one, I think I'm going to go triangles. Yes, triangles, which I love. Remind me so much of Romanesque architecture. Chevrons. And of course, because I've thickened the lines on this side, it looks like the triangles that are pointing downwards are above the ones below. So that's going to be fun to work with. And here I'm going to thicken the lines to the left and the right so this appears lifted from underneath. Just tidy that up. And perhaps I'll do the opposite with another one. Or perhaps I'll make this part thicker so it looks sunken. And then this one the opposite way round so it looks raised. That will come out with shading and so on, as will everything. It's just the thicker ink lines help to start that process. So that feels more coherent. I've got these empty spaces all the way down, which is fun. Okie dokes, let's start to add some patterns, details and other things to these sections. I'll start over here with this one. I just want to put a fine line there. With these, I am going to draw smaller triangles underneath for shading, but I am going to put almost like an indent in here, so I'll make that just that little bit darker, as if we've got a groove in that. Here with this one, I think I'm going to split these and do some feathery kinds of patterns. This is very much influenced, I think, by ancient Egyptian art. I've always had a love of ancient Egypt, as long as I can remember, along with dinosaurs and space and nature and all kinds of stuff. My passions have never left me. They've just morphed into different things. So often things like this will creep out in my art, as they do really remind me of Egypt. I guess the this bird could almost be an ibis if I'd drawn it more ibis-like, but it was an unexpected line that led to that. Here, just going to fill this in with long, thin, rounded rectangles, just to give some depth here. Which is lovely. And here, I think I'm going to do some black and white patterns, which is something I would associate with Hundertwasser more than perhaps others. I could be wrong, you know, I'm sure other artists use them, but the column has a Hundertwasser kind of feel. Not entirely, but the shapes and the way they form are definitely inspired by that. But the fillings are definitely me. I also want to put black and white here as well, but I'm not going to, because I'm going to leave that one as it is, I think. These I'm just going to fill with tiny, tiny, tiny little circles. And rather than using an 01, which has a much finer line and would give a less dense ink layer of ink, I'll stick with this 03 for them. And again, I'm not going to worry about making these all different size or gradient of size to suggest shadow and light. I'm going to let the graphite do the heavy lifting for me with that. So we've got that going on. And then I'll do the same with these ones here. Why am I turning it upside down? Because it's easier for me to reach and hopefully keep my hand out the way. It also stops me putting my hand on the drawing and possibly smudging any ink. But a smudge is never a problem. It can always be made into something else, just like these bands here. Actually, I need another one here on this one. It looks a bit, that looked just a bit too big a gap there. And the same here. As I look at it upside down, it's funny how when you look at things upside down, your perspective changes. So it's not funny really, but reality. And sometimes you can see, yeah, that will really help. That makes sense this way now. You're looking at things in from a different direction with a different sense of what's balanced, what works, what looks right or feels right to you. So another little idea. So I've got all of those going on. I quite like this contrast of dark and light, just to help to bring out some of these. Like this, I really do want to do something here. I really do. And I think I'm going to do some little U shapes, almost like petals, growing from the base and going towards that borderline, but not quite touching it. And then I want some shading. And so I'm going to go to the left and top. Not, let's try the right and top. My driving instructor always used to tell me, not that right, the other right, or the other left, because I used to get confused with my lefts and rights. And yeah, didn't happen on my driving tests, thank goodness. I failed the first one, mind. That's because the council had decided to resurface a road and leave loose gravel there, and an emergency stop on it meant I lost the control of the back end of the car, which was an instant fail. They don't teach you how to deal with that in your driving lessons, which is really daft, because they really should, because you never know when you're going to encounter that again. You know, no harm came. It was only a tiny little loss of control, and I regained control, but I knew instantly that I'd failed, and I drove like an idiot afterwards. Okay, this one here, I'm going to leave filling these in for my finer pen. These here, they almost need to become these kinds of shapes. because I think that would work beautifully, especially if I then fill these areas in with little lines just to make it feel that this is set backwards compared to the rest. Actually works quite nicely. I just need to tidy some of these lines up. I don't want to fill it in entirely with black, but that works quite nicely. And then just going to go up the outside with a fine line and join it. Somewhere like that, hopefully to bring that out. I may actually have to. That doesn't work for me. So I think I am going to have to fill these areas in with black. So I'm going to use the 05 just to make it a quicker task. Having different sized pens to hand is always a good idea, because trying to fill this in with, say, an 01 would be a nightmare because you can't get an even coverage of ink and things like that. That's better. But if I want to change this, once this is all dry, I know I can come back with a white pen and add some details, perhaps some dots up the centre, just to remove some of that dark ink. But I'll see how that balances out at the end. With these here, I do fancy, what do I want to do here? I'm going to fill this with broken lines that don't quite touch the top and bottom. Just to fill it in with some texture. Gone back to my 03 pen, and where they're broken, it adds a little hint of sparkle. Because the ends come around, it almost gives you a feeling there's a border around this. Now, I haven't put any pencil line here to give me a guide as to where they start and stop. The lines, here it is though, but I'm fine with that. They all might be a little bit imperfect, and I'm fine. So that gives a different density of ink. In fact, here I will need to make them that teeny bit longer. That works nicely. Here, this ball that's here, I really want to have that shaded in, I think, more than I want to add patterns, but I will add a border there. I think I may pop one in just there, just to suggest that this is, the bird is above this. So there's a dog yapping outside now. Happy days. Okie dokes. So, right, let's go down here, because here I said I was going to use an 01 here. I'm not using the 03, but I'm putting just solid horizontal lines in close together, so there's more ink than there is white, hopefully, or at least an equal amount. Again, that will suggest that we've got like a hole in there that's in shadow. For these here, I am going to add lines, horizontal lines that are very close together. I don't want to fill this in with black, because it would butt up against that and it would be confusing. But if I use lines, the texture's different. And I can still go to the top and add some more black, so I've got that darkness, and to the left and bottom of these circles, just to separate them from the border. And then I'll get my 01 pen, and I'm going to do my favourite way of adding a suggestion of roundness, which is to draw a couple of concentric sort of semicircles-ish, but they get smaller as you go towards them. So it's almost like the bottom side of this bead, or whatever you want to call it, is in shadow. I also want to, let me get my 03. Here, I also have the feeling I just want to add little bit of sculpting here to create this feeling almost like these are arches. And it's with this one, it almost feels like there should be one here. And perhaps I can just pop that in, add a very dark edge, and perhaps a shading there, just to give us that feeling of that shape there. It's not perfect, but if I'd realised, I would have moved this, spread these out a bit more equally or squashed another one in. Here, I'm just going to fill this section in with nicely little dots. Nicely little dots. Janice, thank you for joining me. I'm sorry it's taken me a while to respond, but I'm lost in drawing and wittering. I'm so glad you enjoy my creations, my art, and I hope it does help you continuing in your journey with art through Zentangle or any other means that you wish. I do borrow things from Zentangle, patterns and things from time to time, more so in my past than I do now. It's all been a process of growth and understanding and learning what's me and what isn't me. And the use of patterns is always something that's going to be with me. I mean, today I'm using more than I would normally, but I've got these lovely columns going on here that will allow me to have those different patterns in. Even just a simple row of black dots just adds that lovely feeling of some intricacy in pattern there. They're so small, there's no way I'm going to get any sense of shading or highlight on them, but just simple black. Here, just simple horizontal or vertical lines in between horizontal ones. And this one, I am going to draw in some connected arches like so. And I'm just going to put a simple line in the center to suggest either a leaf or a petal. And then I'm going to add some shading to the top left, just to help to bring that out. And if I get my O1 again, that was an O3, I thought it was the O1. I can add some shading here. Just by drawing very fine lines very close together. Just to bring that out. Okay, now then, I do want to do something here with this. And what I think I'm going to do is something I'm not too sure about, and I'm not going to do it in pencil first. I'm just going to go for it. But I'm just going to add lots of little lines going in different directions, touching the edges to show that these will be going underneath. And I'm going to continue doing that. They're going in all different directions at random, trying to keep them more or less the same size, but it doesn't matter if some are longer or shorter. It's not important. But if I was clever, which I'm not sure I am, I could think about where I want to leave a highlight and where I want more shadow and put them closer together or further apart, depending on shadow or highlight. Oops, I've got dots going on there. Head went to stippling instead of little lines. Just, if you're going to do this, just take your time. Don't worry about it being perfect, because it won't be. I haven't done this for a very long time. My most important thing, or the thing I really want to do, is to have these lines connecting with the outlines. So that gives a grey background to that particular section, so it looks like the bird is up above. Dokes, here I am going to add another simple pattern of dashes and a dot. So dash, dot, dash, dot. Something as simple as that. It just splits that area up, adds something to it so it feels that it belongs. And here I'm just going to go in with a little edge like so. And I'm going to do the same on the bird. Because it helps with that feeling that this is sort of like curved over, this is in shadow, which I could put in with pen, but I think I'm going to do that with the graphite. Here. And I'm going to use diagonal lines, fill this in, alternating them from one side to another. This would be the equivalent of the Zentangle pattern Shattuck, but I'm not trying to be perfect. This area is so tiny. That I'm not going to get it perfect, but it just gives a different texture, a different density of ink to what I've used elsewhere. So it brings it separate and apart. Now this section here, I've already put the borders in. So I'm going to go back to my 03 pen rather than my 01. Excuse the clicking of my pen tops. It's an old habit of me just to close them to stop the nibs drying out. I probably don't need to because I'm changing things. What size have I picked up? I picked up the 03. I don't want the 05. Sorry, I want the 03. No. I have my moments. Okie doke. So what could I do with this one? I'm going to do a zigzag again because that seems to be appearing here. And I tend to like to repeat patterns across my drawing because that gives a sense of coherence. Now, I may not use everyone more than once. When I've got little dots here, but I've got dots and dashes there. It's a variation, I guess. I've got the black and white panel here, the tiled bit there. I don't think I'm going to do that anywhere else. In fact, I'm not. I can see that already. But if I can bring some elements in like this, which will tie things together to say, yes, we belong together. We're not just a random assemblage of stuff. Random assemblages are fun, mind you. But, or apparently random assemblages. Again, I head into archaeological terms is going. Because they're never really random when it's archaeological, because they've all got a story to tell and they tell the story of a particular place and different times in a place, or things like that, so they can appear to be random, but they're not really. They're all connected to that particular place where excavation has taken place. But assemblage of patterns in a drawing, it's nice to have some coherence. I think so. I think that's why I like monochrome so much, because it just gives me that feeling of a coherent colour. Yeah, I'm just putting that very fine V shape in these others, the smaller one, just so it mirrors the one that's over here. Where is it there? It's on a smaller scale, but it's the same kind of idea. It looks different because this is much tinier than this, but it's the same pattern. So here, I do want to do some fiddly bits and bobs. So I am going to start by putting this edge in on this side there, which gives me that feeling that this is raised above the background. And I want to use this pattern, but I don't want to use it in each section. So I'm going to start at the top And I'm going to start here. All these teeny tiny little ticks. Let me just zoom in, because then you'll be able to see what I've been doing here. Gone quiet because I'm actually concentrating on this. I'm thinking, gosh, I could sleep for Britain now. Seriously. Which is daft. I haven't been awake for long. But that already has lifted that up. And I think I'll do it alternately. So I've done this one section, I'll miss that one out, so I'll do this one in the same way. And yes, I know I've put a little black dot there. That won't be an issue or a problem because I'm going to make that disappear. And then I need to follow this along and it comes over to this side. Like so. And I haven't got any connecting to the outside lines here or here really. But I want that. I want it to feel that it disappears underneath the edge and that it's all connected in one way or another. Got some little spaces in this one I can fill in because I use bigger lines. I want the same kind of ink density, I guess. So that works. Now then, this one here, I want a lot more. I want a completely different density of ink. And I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this pen to draw some parallel lines that are vertical, relevant in respect to the line. I'm drawing them horizontally here. But my lines aren't perfect. They're all a bit wibbly wobbly, so they'll get closer together and further apart. And I've done that deliberately. It creates a whole different texture, but also a different amount of ink that helps to separate these layers out. So I'm doing the same here. Which are lovely. Go to the other side so I can work in the other direction. Don't know why. Sometimes it's nice to turn the paper around and work in a different angle. So that's helped that swan to stand above all that background. These here, I really don't know what to do with. I'm tempted to leave them. Let me just zoom out. I'm tempted to leave them as they are. Kind of. But I'm tempted to use one colour for the background here and perhaps a different colour inside these. I may not. I don't know yet. But I think my next step is going to be to add some shading before I decide anything else. I am going to use my 04. I'm just reaching up here because I need a pencil sharpener and it's up on my shelf above my desk. So I'm going to use the 04. I just need to sharpen it a little bit. That's okay, that'll do nicely. I've got an eraser here, so I'm just going to clean up the points of my tortillon just a little bit. by using my kneadable eraser, because it will take some of the graphite off there. And then we're going to start. Now these, I'm happy with them as they are, but I want some shading from the point and the other side. Also here where this goes under, where this overlaps, like so, and the same here. With a nice sharp point, it's easier to get into these little nooks and crannies, as it were. I am surprised at how much I like this method of adding shading and lights, or shading and leaving light. It really has surprised me, because I've been very much unhappy with this because of the greyness of the colour of the graphite, but I'm coming to find it quite pleasant, especially when it comes to putting watercolour over the top of it in the background sections, because it really works nicely, in my opinion. Because watercolour is translucent, the graphite shading will show through, and that actually makes me smile. I am adding little bits of graphite to the tips here, just to add shading on those ribbedy sections. Ribbedy? I don't know if that's a word, but ribby sections, that's better. I try not to spread the graphite too far, but I do want it to just blend out that little bit. And already that's starting to add that kind of volume. I could do with it perhaps a little bit darker in places, so I can go back and add pencil, perhaps without blending it out even. But I am likely to work it into the paper so that we've got that that darker area where the overlapping is, and where the tips and all of these are, just to help to bring that out. So instead of spreading it out, I'm using the tortillon just to work this into the paper so it won't hopefully smudge as much. It's bound to smudge eventually because it's graphite. The trick is not to handle it too much. Need some shadow on the bottom of there, which I've just done. Let's try and keep all of this nice and dark where it needs to be dark. Not spreading it out, she says. And just a bit more there. And that's helped. So I'm looking up at the screen to see what's going on here with this. Okay, so we've done those. Let's make a start here. I want the shading for this one at the bottom here. Then I'm going to have a little bit on this side and this side. I'm not going to get very complicated with shading because I've got very small areas, and I think the overall effect is the most important thing. It's not so much getting everything as it would be in reality, it's giving that suggestion of shading. And I am putting some graphite in these places here because I want it darker where the shadow would be. Again, it's all about where will the shadows be. And I can use just enough of my tortillon here just to add little hints of shading, even on these little arches here. Okay, again, it's the start and end of all of these. Here I want shading top and bottom, and here I'm going to put the shading in between the outer and the second of those arcs, because I want to leave a highlight around the edge because there would be reflected light there. I don't want so much graphite that I lose my pen work. I want enough that we have that feeling that we've got a highlight and this is more circular. Perhaps I do just need to perhaps put just a little bit more there. I look up at the screen or sit back and have a look and go, yeah, that's better. Here I'm going to have some shading at the base of these and here. And I could do with a piece of paper to put under my hand while I'm working over all of this. I want to choose one side of these shapes to be that little bit darker, again to help with that sensation of volume, like that. This isn't very smooth, but that is why kneadable erasers are so important, she said. Oh, ow. So I can just go back and just gently remove some of that graphite where it's darker, and then go back and just bring back that which I've lost that I want there. So that's quite nice. That works. Okay, here and here we're going to go these. Okay, now I've got to stop and really think because I've hit a bird and a ball, bird and a bead. So I do want shading underneath this bird. Perhaps a little bit there. But I also want to think about where my highlight would be, which I think would be around there. So I have added some graphite there. So I'm going to add some shading around there. I want to keep it fairly dark underneath the bottom, underneath the bird. And in fact, I'm going to go back and add more graphite, but I'm not going to spread it out much again because I want that dark shadow to lift that bird up. Don't want to lose all of that texture. I don't think I will. But I just think I need that darkness there just to help lift that bird up, which it does. And then it's the same idea here. I want the dark area just to lift that bird up. Maybe that I might just add some there and perhaps just take some off. Dabbing this on just to erase little bits, just give that bit of a highlight as if it's quite dull. That actually works, and I am going to add shadow along there and there, around the eye, a little bit on the back, but mainly it's going to be along that edge. Now this is going, I could do with a very fine tortillon for this, but it'll be fine because it will, because I'm going to trust myself with this. And then just use little bits of graphite in areas just to help to bring this together. So that's my bird lifting off. Oh, Janice, it'd be lovely. Thank you for joining me. It's been lovely. And I understand that it's morning over in Canada. It's 2:45 in the afternoon here in the UK. So I don't know how much longer this is going to take me. It's probably half an hour, perhaps a bit longer. But we're getting there. So that one's quite simple. This one, I'm going to add shading in an unusual way because I'm going to put it where the ends of these lines are, but on the top and the right of them, as if we've got a bit of a dip going on here. Don't want that shading to spread too far, but enough to give that feeling of there being a dip. Again here, I've got to put shading at the ends. So we'll do all of that. This one, I'm going to put it right underneath here, like so, and underneath this one. I'm going to spread that out. So let's do those. I find it useful for me personally to add shading in a couple of sections at a time close together, rather than trying to do all the pencil and then go back and remember where I've put it or what I want to do. So it's quite instinctive with me, but I do like to have these highlights. And again, I've gone a bit too grey in areas, so I'm just going to get my eraser out and just remove that, just to help. This one, there's shading going underneath here and around there, just to help to lift that bird up. Again, show that it's got some volume, that it's not the same level, I suppose, as the this section here. I'm going to do the same here. Around the bird. And again here. Paying more attention to around the birds than elsewhere. But with some shading as well around the edges of that section, just as I have done in others. So I'm going to do the same kind of thing here. And here. Just like that. And where I've got perhaps not enough of a shadow, then I'm just going to take my eraser and just pick some of that up, just to get a shadow. Highlight is what I meant. I'm sure you knew that. And just create that highlight. Especially as I'm working in very small spaces. It's nice to be able to get that highlight in. And then here. And just that little bit of highlight coming back in. It's nice. And then I need to pay attention now to my swan or whatever it may be. Just to help perhaps add some dimension here. Again, just to lift it up off. I need something I can pokey poke inside. Now it's not long enough. So, no, it won't go, will it? Oh, sort of push that out. I don't think it's made the end any narrower. I haven't got anything there that's long enough to push in, but if tortillons become too blunt, not sharp enough point on the end, you can use a long pokey thing, like a long barbecue skewer or something similar, just to push it out. I used a bead rolling tool, which only went so far down, so it's pushed a lot out there, but it hasn't got to the tip, because they do push themselves in, especially if you use a lot of pressure. But like with all things, you can alter it back. I say all things. With all things tortillon, you can. Right, so I just now need to brighten up some of these areas again, because I've overlapped too much. Graphite. And we're nearly done on this side. This one is awkward because I've got this rather thick, dark line here. Come on, Angela. That's it. Shape your eraser. Needs blue razors are great. You can shape them into this kind of shape you want. And gently remove that excess graphite that dulls everything down. Shadow and shading is important. So is highlight. Which is what I'm doing here. I'm just going back and looking at where the highlights are and just taking some of that graphite off just to help with those highlights and the way that things will appear. So that's a bit better. So I'm up to the last section here. I'll have some here, a little bit under there. And then here it's going to be left and top. Perhaps a little bit along the bottom outside this. Question is, do I have? I do. Just reaching over. Another very useful thing to have is something called a piece of sandpaper or an eraser, not an eraser, nail file. Because then you can actually clean up the point, but you can also sharpen it. You take off the used paper and you get a sharper point, a sharper tip again. And here I've just got a little bit too much grey going where I don't want the grey, but we're getting there. So there we are. So that's that side done. And when you look at the two, you can really see the difference between them. Thanks, Trevor. I'm glad you do. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Oh, dear goodness. Jeepers. Okay. So it's all coming to life. Let's deal with these big, long areas here. So I'm going to want shading at the base here. And I will want shading here. Also in these sections too. Because this is a 4B pencil. 4B pencils are what we call soft, which means that you have a lot of graphite and not so much of the clay binder in them. And graphite is a very slippery element. I used to love getting graphite out when I was teaching about elements or about carbon and so on, because it's quite safe for my pupils to hold and for me. And they were amazed at how slippery it is. It is used as a kind of lubricant in machinery that needs a real high temperature lubricant, where oil-based ones wouldn't work. And it is amazingly slippery because of its molecular structure. So the more graphite you have, the more it will spread and the more it will grey things down. So this one works best over a large area, but I want that density of shading. So, across the whole of my drawing, which means it needs to be used carefully elsewhere. I don't like HB. It's hard to get the right darkness. You have to go back and work it again and again. Anything softer than a 4B would just spread too much, although it'd be very dark. So if you only wanted it in a limited area, it would work. I mean, I must probably put too much down in these sections, but I don't mind. In fact, I think this is going to work just wonderfully, just as it is. But I may not need to add anything to these sections here. Just need to work this in. keeping the highlight as much as I can, but knowing that if I spread the highlight too far, that's okay, because I've got my eraser here to help me sort that out and to make it better. Which is what I'm going to do here, just with that and perhaps a little bit there, and here too. And these last ones here. If I decided I wanted to add any patterns over the top of the graphite here, I can certainly do that. That's never a problem. Because the pens will write on top. I think I'm quite happy leaving these less embellished than the other sections. I think it'll work nicer this way. Though, of course, it's your own preference as to how you do this. I think you don't have to do this at all. You could just use the basic outlines and add colours to suit yourself, like a colouring sheet almost. And there's nothing wrong in doing that or creating that. Good way of getting used to colours. So that's all of this done, almost. But I do want to put some shading at the top and where there's an overlap. Trying not to move my hand where I put it. It's not always easy, but I'm okay. I haven't got a lot of graphite on my hands, so I'm not smudging it too much. Working it into the paper with the tortillon helps to make it less smudgy, if that's a word. It is now. I've invented it. Less likely to smudge. I definitely want a highlight here. That hasn't come quite as nice as I'd expected it to, but we can work on that. Okay, so it's just a case of bringing some of these highlights back in here. Some of them have got that little bit darker, and I want that brightness. That actually works quite nicely. Okay, these ones. Under the top, inside here, inside the bottom, more than the top. I'm going to put some graphite here where so I'm just going very quickly through this because I know where I want to put them. Where we've done something a bit different, I'll stop like I am here and say that I'm going around this one to the left and bottom, just like that, and then there's a little bit in there, a little bit there and there. These ones I want shading on one side of these, just to help to bring that out. The bottom is going to be under these and just a little bit under there. This one's just either side, and then this one is the one that makes, we're going to have shading at the ends, but I need to look at where there would be shading on these. So here there would be shading underneath, this one on top, ta-da, and underneath. Well, there it would be. And then here I'm just going to put it on either end. Here it's going to be just a bit around, I think. Starting at the bottom and working my way up, because why not? So that works. Here it's on the other side. Oh, that side it should have been. It's okay. Magic eraser just to bring some highlight back in. That'll be fine, she says. Same here and here, just to bring some highlights back. Okay, here. And here I'm just using the graphite on my tortillon there for that. I haven't put any graphite down. And I'm sort of like speeding up and almost rushing this because I'm aware of time, but I'm also a bit fed up of doing it. I get like that. If I was doing this without doing it on YouTube, going live as it says, then I would have stopped and taken a break. In fact, I really do need a break, but I'm not going to take one for a little while because I know I'm coming to the end. So as I do, I'll soon have my next cup of tea. So that'll be great. And a bath. I haven't had a bath yet today, but that's not unusual. Think about cooking something for dinner, because I got up so late that breakfast was at dinner time or lunchtime. But that happens a lot with me. My sleeping can be all over the place and I can sleep for a very long time. Okay, there's actually some shading that's left to do. I want all of this to feel like it is floating above the background. So that means graphite in these areas to bring that shading, shadowing of these sections down. And I'm going to focus on putting the graphite to the right and the top of all of these things. Okay, and I'm going to blend it in as I go and blend it out, and I can blend it out further than perhaps I would do in any space because I really want that feeling of shadowing. I want to kind of mimic the shapes that we've got here, as if there's, you know, the shading is following them, is being logical, but really part of me goes, nah, it's not in my world because light doesn't work quite the same way. The atmosphere is different. It's, you know, there could be something in the air that scatters the light in a different way or creates shadows differently, and I'm fine with that. So that should kind of be able to start to lift the graphite, and I am just tapping it on just to create an uneven shadow because that makes it easier to fill these in. So again, the bottom and right. So strictly speaking, this is the only places where there should be some. Top and right, sorry. But I am going around this side here because it needs some, and I'm going to add some here. And no, my shading isn't neat and tidy because it doesn't have to be, because the tortillon will blend it all in and out. And I'm adding colour to these sections as well, don't forget. So the graphite will be in the background, not foreground. This just gives that shading. Yeah, and it just lifts everything up. I'm rushing because I want to get to the watercolour bit as well, because that's the fun bit. Now, this is the tedious bit, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough. It just needs to help to add that extra dimension. I'm using this to lose some of the very straight lines or the areas where perhaps I haven't managed to blend things out as smoothly as I would like. Trying to use circular motions, but that may not be perfect. And this is one after this one to go for shading. That one went a lot further than I expected, so I'm just taking some of that up, going back just to get that around. And then here it's going to be underneath here, because this is that window, and so my frame will be above all of this. I am going to add some shading on that side, yeah, but of course on this side definitely. Now I just need to think about what colour I'm going to add. Perhaps if I think about that as I'm doing this. I don't know. I used turquoise yesterday, and I'm not sure what I would like to use today. That turquoise colour is one of my favourites. But I also love gamboge, which is a sort of like, it's a really unusual yellowy, browny colour. It's more yellow than it is brown, but it's a very odd colour. It's one of my favourites. Payne's grey would be fun because it's a blue grey, but that would just make it more monochrome. I'd like something that's quite a bit different, I suppose. I'm not sure what. Okay, so I've got some here. I'm just going to tap some of that graphite off just to make it more of a interesting area. By doing this, I'm not in control of this, and being out of control of things is actually rather good for me. So that is all that. The one thing I wanted to do, I said I was going to do, is to put another kind of frame around this, or another border, another edge, which I'm going to do now. So it really ends up looking a bit like a window. In fact, I could do this, and thinking about that and thinking, oh, rounded arches. How can I do that? I might have to make a template that I can draw around for that. It could be fun. Okay. Yeah, I'm not making it perfect because it does not have to be perfect. But the temptation to fill this with gold is strong. It really is. And that perhaps is how I can get that love of a bit of glitter and glitz into my artwork. There we go. All's well here. Gosh, that dog at the back is really yappy. Actually, I really like that double border. Why have I not done this before, she says. Why have I not done this before? Who knows? Who knows? I still don't know what colour, so let's have a look. I have got a swatch sheet for my watercolours somewhere. Do I know where? No, I haven't got a clue. I've put it somewhere safe and haven't been able to find it, so they're keeping it in the tin. These are lovely. They're very vibrant. They're professional quality, and a little bit of colour goes a long way. So I've got violets, got lovely oranges. This is the gamboge, which looks pretty like sick, but actually it's such a beautiful yellow colour. That one's a lovely burnt reddy colour, burnt brown. I have got, not sure what that is. I think that might be indigo. Let's have a little look and see what colours. But I do like indigo, I must say. where's my brush? The brush I would like to use today. Where are you? Where art thou hiding? Ah, there. I think this one is indigo. Oh yeah. What about that? Oh, that's nice. So indigo-ish mixed with this turquoise blue makes a lovely rich blue colour. And I think I would have enough there, possibly, to do the whole lot. I'll take some more of that indigo though and just pop that in. That makes it nice and dark. Other colours are getting mixed in. Am I worried? No, because there's more of the colours I want here than there are the others. See how it mixes and spreads? I love that. So I may have some areas that are less turquoise now. Let me put my water out the way so I don't knock it off. Let's bring this in. Let's start with a light watercolour, because the water actually helps the graphite to get stuck in the paper to a degree. So I'm not going to move it around. But by wetting the paper and keeping it just damp is a way I can drop colour in and let it bloom and blossom and do wonderful things, hopefully. So that's what I'm doing here. I've got this nice and moist, horrible words, moist, damp. It's a bit wetter than I'd like, but we're going to make a start and see what happens. I want to go right up to the edges where I can, but not go into my drawn design. So let's have a look what happens. This is just magic. It really is. And I can just pop my colour in around the top and just let it bloom and blossom as it will. I can add more as I go along. And as long as I keep this nice and damp, it will do what it will do. And that is me being out of control of what's happening here. And if you know me, that's not easy to do. So learning to let go and see the magic in watercolours is something that is quite difficult for me. Now, this is quite a flat wash now. The colours have all sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? Have all blended and so on. So I'm just dropping in some small amount of the indigo and bringing that around, letting that spread as it will, and giving me that dark shadow underneath these, which will really help to lift them up. I don't want to let it dry before I add anything else, but I will let it dry for a bit because I may come back and add, I'm going to, I've got my turquoise here, so I'm just going to add some of the turquoise in and just perhaps add some turquoise at the bottom in a dark colour, dark saturated. Now, watercolours do, so I am just dropping this in, adding puddles of it in places and just letting it do what it will. And that will create an uneven ground, and the colours will lighten up as they dry, as I've splashed colour everywhere, including there. Come on, let's just get that up. Worst comes in, I use a white gel pen, sort this one out. So as this dries, that colour will lighten somewhat, and I can give it a bit of a hand, if you don't mind the noise, of my hot air tool, my heat gun, my heat tool, which will help to dry and to set this. Actually, it's really quite dark even then, but it does stop the blooming and everything else. But it's showing all these beautiful patterns in there, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's still wet, it's still damp, the paper, but it's dry enough for me to move on. So I want a little bit of colour so I can see where I've put water. It's my preference. because I can really see then where I've been, where it's damp or wet, where it's not. And of course I can just pick up a little bit more, move it around and bring this together. Again, I do love that turquoisey colour, but I like the addition of that indigo because it really is helping to bring in that darkness where I want it. My paper will get quite wet here, so it's going to take a while to flatten out. And I think at the end I may just blast it with okay, come on then. Need lots of you with my heat tool from both sides, just so that we can get all of this working and moving, which would be lovely, she says. Try not to work the paper too much because this isn't watercolor paper. But it actually stands up to watercolors really well, and paints do bloom and spread and mix quite nicely on it, which is what I want it to do more than anything else. Okay, let me just get some of the turquoise again. We can put that in at the bottom and just let that do what it wants to do. And I may actually tilt that up so it can run. So I don't know if you can see it running there, which is fab. It gives different patterns there. I'm going to get some of the darker indigo to go at the top as well, and where the shadows lie, just to get this working. And this darker expression of colour, of, you know, shades and so on here, just to lift the drawing. I think I like the use of colour so much for this because it really does lift the white, black and white up so much, makes it just so amazing in my mind anyway. There's a little bit there that needs to go down, which is great. So I'm adding all kinds of things here. I just add a bit more there. Just dropping little bits in just to add some extra colour, but also to help with these blooming patterns, because that is fascinating to me. And I may not be doing this in the best possible way, but it's where I'm going to learn in my own way how to do these things. Okay, so I've got 2 more sections to do. So again, it's just this little one here. So this one shouldn't take too long. The nice thing about these brushes is they've got a very sharp, you know, fine points at the end if you use very little pressure, but they hold so much paint. They're amazing. And I think that is what is really helping me with watercolor and everything else to one degree or another. Oh, it's now raining outside. Happy days. So I'm going in with indigo, just indigo on its own. It's very wet, so that the paint, I don't know if you can see all the threads that are running off this one. This one might not have quite as much turquoise in it, but I love the way this is working. I really do. And I have got a bit of paint inside the section here, but I can fix that, I'm sure. It's lovely. And then gosh, I've got paint everywhere here. Right, just some turquoise now. The base, the bottom, just to spread up into this for them to meet and mix, hopefully, or not, as the case may be, because I'm happy either way, because it is what it is. You can see this is beginning to flatten out as it dries. Right, next job. Last section, move that out the way, otherwise I'll be sending stuff all over the place. Let's get this all nice and wet. Just adding some white into those sections there, just to see what will happen, because it adds those lighter sections and it can add an interesting pattern texture. Just add some other dots here and there, perhaps not of white but just dotty, so that they all sort of like blend together in a way. I am fiddling with it too much, aren't I? Yes, Angela. We'll see. Oh, thank you, Jay Weber. It's my pleasure to do so. It's one of these things where I think I'll be doing more lives on a regular basis. It's easy to set up. It doesn't mean I'm waiting ages for things to edit and, oh, look at that, that's dried. Oh, it's okay, it'll be fine. And it just means I can do it fairly impromptu. Yeah, I can film, but then it can take a lot of energy out of me, and then it's sort of like the editing, and not that I do a lot of editing, but processing it and adding and what do you call it, end screens, or end pages to it, and everything else can take me a lot of focus that I sometimes don't have after I've done a video. Or I mess it up and I accidentally delete something I can't get back, or make a mess of it, or find out that the video just does not want to upload no matter what I say or do. Sorry for putting my arm underneath the camera, but I am reaching for my water. Oh, that's all beautiful turquoise now. We'll add the indigo. Much darker than yesterday's in colour. Right, that's the one I want a lot, and then just move it around and let it just flow as it needs to, is always my idea. I think for me, that's the magic of watercolour. It is filling spaces with colour and letting it do its thing, and just being amazed with what we end up with, and the way that the colours mix and bloom and granulate if they're granulating colours. I think that makes me happiest most. The colours are quite dark and muted here today. I mean, when they're wet, they're beautiful. But as all watercolours do, when they dry, if I move that over here, perhaps you won't get so much of the tinkling of the brush in the water as I clean it and dry it. But look at that, I've managed to scatter drops everywhere, and I think that will just be part and parcel of my process today. It is what it is. I don't always think about where I place things and what's going to happen, but we get there. Right, let me move my paints out of the way, and I'll get my heat tool out so I can dry all of this. It dries quite quickly. As I've said, this isn't watercolour paper, so I'm not going to come back with other layers unless I really want to. The colours in each section are going to be slightly different because I've been mixing things on the go. Gosh, this is really moist. The paper's going to take a while to dry, but as it does, it flattens out, it shrinks back to its original size, more or less. But I don't mind having that variation in colour in places. It makes it interesting. And though this is now a bit cockled, sort of like wibbly wobbly, bumpy, lumpy, I don't know. But it is more or less finished. I may want to go back and just, I don't know, it's not on the camera completely. And on my screen, these colours aren't as vibrant as they are to my eye. This is really quite turquoise as this one and the others. This area does look a bit washed out, but I'm going to leave it as it is because I know if I start fiddling with it, I will mess it up. But there's some beautiful sort of like textures in the paints that you can see on the camera, though they're much more contrasty on the film. But I love the way that my drawing sits above all of these colours. I'm glad I didn't put colour inside these at the moment. I am tempted. I'm still tempted, but I haven't decided what I want to do here, which is why I've left them blank. And that's fine. You can do that. Oh, thank you, Jay Weber. I will do. If I can give you a heads up in advance, I will. And I love the indigo as well, Trevor. I really do. Indigo is one of my favourite colours, and with turquoise, it's lush. With rusty colours, I love it as well, but not to bleed one into another. Though dropping sort of rusty colours into indigo and let them bloom gives some really interesting patterns and shades. But these are things I can experiment with. So what have I enjoyed today? I've enjoyed just creating for the sake of it and the surprise of bird shapes appearing or things that I went, oh, they're birds. And what I thought were going to be leaves end up like some kind of seed pods. And the columns, the use of columns. And this almost looks like, I don't know, if there's something growing here, or perhaps if I add more lines on the inside, it'd be like some kind of energy flowing or smoke or magic, maybe. I'm not sure, as I said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. I like the shading, which is unusual for me to say, even though I'm looking at it going, what was I thinking? I know that it will scan nicely and it will look okay eventually, because of course I will share a scanned image of this on social media. And as I said yesterday, I am thinking about cutting back on the social media I do share with or where I put work. I'm not happy with the news that unless you opt out, and you have to give reasons why you want to opt out of your images not being used to train AI on with Meta, I may just delete everything from Facebook and Instagram and just leave a goodbye note saying, come and see me on my blog or my main, it might be my main Facebook page, but I certainly won't be posting art there. But there'll be other places. And that will mean that I don't feel so overwhelmed by that task of keeping up with social media. But I also know that I don't need to post every day consistently there. It's better to do a good post every now and again than to just post something for the sake of posting, in my opinion. And I also read something on Medium, and I can't find the article by who wrote it, who suggested that as well. And I went, yeah, I've been thinking that. So this is what I need to do. And I enjoy the live streams because it can be very impromptu. I don't have to worry about upload times. It's going to take a while for YouTube to process it so the video is available for everybody to see, but that's fine as well. I'm happy with all of this. And I'm happy to be back sharing things with you, having that energy to do so. So if I'm missing for a couple of days, just know that my energy needs to go elsewhere. It's not that I'm forgetting or I'm going to give up. I'm not going to do that. But I'll be here when that energy is there. And if I'm just going to draw for things like this, then I'm going to come here. I do want to show you something though before you go. I want to share something with you because I've been a member of Domestica for a number of years now. And I started following a course about fantasy art or fantasy characters. And it's really interesting. And it involves not using pen, but it's using pencil and watercolor. So it sketches more than anything else. This is my first page of some and ideas of sprites trying to get different shapes. I mean, this is hideous now, the heavy colour. It truly is. But I actually find this one quite cute. This one's really cute. I mean, obviously some kind of forest sprite with fairy wings, or, you know, I've got leaf wings there. I've got some nice seed pods. But actually drawing in pencil and adding watercolour over the top is a really lovely thing to do. I know that I can go in and darken lines with pencil or even with pen if I want to later on. But it's that freedom to sketch, undo, sketch, erase, sketch, and refine and so on, and just doing it knowing that this is just for fun. If you'd like to see things like this, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. My imagination isn't always brilliant, but I will get there, hopefully, with characters and things. It's very much me. It's more whimsical than scary. It's unreal and impossible lengths of limbs and things like that, but who says not? And I've got this idea that fairies should wear big boots. I think they should, just to keep them grounded and stop them flitting around. Lead soles, just so they're on the earth. But these, you know, I'm thinking about it. So it's a little avenue I'm exploring and something I'm using watercolor for. This one I had to let dry. I haven't finished adding the color there, but I quite like it with the soft colors. But I will see how it comes. I just thought I'd share that with you. So, you know, I'm constantly looking for new things to do and you know, ways to explore my art and my expression of art. And that course came up and interested me because my latest colouring book is called Haunted. It's all about creepy, cute critters and characters and so on in sort of like different kinds of settings and environments. And I had a lot of fun drawing that and drawing these cute creatures. I just wanted to see if I could push it into something a bit less simple, I suppose, less very stylized, and into something that had a bit more detail and a bit, it's never going to be realistic with me, but something that has that more grown up feel or more sophisticated or more detail. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, because colouring pages have to be quite simple in their way, with not too much detail, because the detail will get lost when people colour things in, and it also limits their expression, in my opinion. So it's how can I do things like this and create these characters and give them names and a story. And I don't know whether I'll achieve that, but if you'd like me to share that journey, just let me know. So I'm going to say goodbye. Good afternoon here from South Wales in the United Kingdom. In the valleys of South Wales, a very damp, windy afternoon now, cloudy. And I'll be back when I have the energy and the time to do this. It's been over 2 hours, you do know that. And I've enjoyed every moment, and I hope you have too. So be creative and find joy in every day, many times over. Bye for now. Goodbye. Bye all.